Okay, a question here about faith from the narrative of Jairus' daughter. It says this You stated that God will allow suffering if you depend on Him completely. Please clarify. Jairus' faith was severely tested when he learned that his daughter was dead. At that extreme faith testing moment, Jairus obviously didn't lose his faith. So, does this imply that Jairus believed, or at least hoped, that Jesus would bring her back from the dead like he did with Lazarus? Thanks again. Well, the text doesn't give us any indication that Jairus had faith that God would bring him back from the dead, and it could have been that Jairus's faith went from extremely hopeful to almost snuffed out. We don't know exactly what Jairus was thinking because the text doesn't say. But one thing I think is important to kind of recognize about faith in general is that faith is not, according to the scriptures, a binary concept. Either you have it or you don't. Faith is something that can grow. So you can have faith that's very small, faith, like Jesus says, like a mustard seed, in other words, very, very small, or you can have faith that's very, very strong. And oftentimes in the scriptures, the way God grows our faith is through trials. James chapter 1, right? Count it all joy, my brothers, when you face trials of many kinds. Now, why in the world would I count it joy to face trials? Answer, because you know that the testing of your faith produces endurance. In other words, that faith is going to grow through the trial. That's the outcome. So if strong faith is a very good thing, then that's the reason we should welcome trials, because trials is the thing that in the end produces greater faith. Another metaphor that the Bible uses for growing our faith is actually the metaphor of removing impurities from minerals. Or from like a conglomerate block of minerals. So picture, for example, gold, right? This block of gold, but it's got mixed into it all sorts of impurities. And that's supposed to represent our weak faith. The metaphor would go something like this. Do we trust God that He will provide for our every needs, our material needs, our emotional needs, our spiritual needs? Do we trust Him? Is that an actual true statement of a Christian? Well, of course it is. We trust God for all of those things. We know He is the one who provides for our food, that He's the one who provides for that He will answer our prayers according to His will. We believe those things as Christians. But we also, mixed in with that, is a belief that, well, I know God's in control of it, but I also kind of trust myself and the fact that I got to work hard. I'm going to trust in my own ability to provide for my needs. I'm going to try to manipulate circumstances and use my human effort, or I'm going to depend on somebody else who I trust to meet my needs. And so our faith is kind of impossibly mixed in together with all these other hopes and trusts. And what trials do, trials are like heat that eventually liquefies that conglomerate in our heart so that God can scrape that dross off the top. He can just scrape it off. And then after it cools, after that trial has subsided, what are you left with? You're left with pure faith. In other words, you're not trusting in your bank account. You're not trusting in people. You are trusting in God alone. But it took the trial. It took the trial to melt that, to bring it to the surface so that God could scrape it off. And I want to read from 1 Peter that it talks about this very thing. It's a great passage in this regard. So it's 1 Peter chapter 1. It says, in this you rejoice, though now for a little while it is necessary, you have been grieved by various trials. The recipients of Peter's letter were in severe trial, and they are being grieved by it. They are lamenting it. They don't want it. They wish it was gone. All of that's true. And so why? So they're being grieved temporarily by these trials, so that the tested genuineness of your faith, more precious than gold that perishes, though it is tested by fire, may be found to result in praise and glory and honor at the revelation of Jesus Christ. So this tested faith, this faith that has been heated up and refined and refined and refined multiple times, is to the praise and glory of God that will eventually be rewarded in the coming of Jesus Christ. That's the picture. So, returning back to Jairus, this event certainly grew his faith, so that the next time a trial came into his life, he said to himself, I don't even have to think. I don't even have to worry a little bit. I know God is faithful. He has proved himself to me time and time and time again, and especially back then with my daughter. I know he's faithful. Like Jairus' faith had been refined. So that's the way. That's what we need to take into the trials in our life to remind us that God is doing something even in our suffering. Don't forget, 2 Timothy 3:12, all those who desire to live godly in Christ Jesus will be persecuted. That's actually a promise of God because of the testimony that we bear in Christ the reproaches of his body. In other words, we are his ambassadors, and to the degree to which he was mistreated, we will be mistreated. But also, that persecution is promised for our good, for our own growth. We are disciplined as sons, right? Hebrews chapter 10. He cares about us. He will grow us through the trials that he allows to come into our life. So don't despair when trials come.